Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. Owning a practice takes a lot of time and hard work. Unfortunately, many dentists spend years building their business and don't get to reap the benefits. But it doesn't have to be that way. Today's show is about having a vision to build wealth in and outside of your practice so that you can enjoy more freedom. Dr. David Phelps specializes in creating passive income streams and building a practice in a way you can replace yourself. So Dr. Phelps is a former practice owner and is the creator of Freedom Founders, where he teaches how to manage your dental practice profitably. First, here are a few things you're going to hear about today. You're going to hear about the biggest regret dentists have after running a practice for several years that would have allowed them to have more freedom sooner, the reason so many associateships fail, one of the key parts of a business that most dentists don't value, the type of customers that many dentists overlook, how becoming a better speaker can help grow your business, the difference between wealth and money, and finally, a word of caution about financial advisors. And at the end of the episode, you'll find out where you can get a bonus that calculates the gap between where you are today and where you want to be on the freedom scale. So be sure to listen all the way through this entire interview to get access to that. Now, here's my interview with Dr. David Phelps. Hello, ambitious dentist. Today we have with us Dr. David Phelps. Dr. Phelps was a practicing dentist for 21 years. He was an owner of a dental practice for 27 years. You notice that math doesn't really work out. He was actually a passive owner of a dental practice for multiple years as well. He is also the founder of Freedom Founders, a business that helps dental practices maximize profitability, how to helps dentists break the chain so that they can actually taste freedom, as well as create multiple passive income streams for dentists. Now, Dr. Phelps works with a lot of dentists that are older than our listener base most of the time. And so I'm really excited to have him on because he's going to be able to tell us today what you guys should be doing now rather than what you would need to be doing in 25, 30 years if you were to be coming to him then. So I think it's going to be a very interesting perspective. He's a dentist that has a very unique perspective on the industry that I just don't hear enough of, and is very, very real for someone that I talk to nowadays whenever they're talking about starting a practice. So he's going to have a lot of great information for us today. And so Dr. Phelps, thank you so much for coming on today.
Jonathan, truly a pleasure. I'm really glad to be with you and excited to do this podcast with you.
Well, great. So we always love to start out. Tell us how you got started in dentistry. Where'd you go to school? How did you become a dental practice owner?
Yeah, sure, Jonathan. Well, I graduated from Baylor College of Dentistry right here in Dallas, Texas, where I am located today, some 33 years ago. So 1983 was the year I graduated. I got into dentistry probably because of a role model in my life, and that was an orthodontist who treated me when I was, back in the time frame when we would be typically getting treated. So I was probably 9 to 13 or 14. I had a lot of malocclusion at the time, so I went through quite a long therapy. And my orthodontist was somebody I really respected, and he took a real interest in me. Now, my father was a physician, and I originally thought I would go into medicine and just follow his footsteps. But this course of finding a person in dentistry that I really felt like was a role model in the community. He just had that stature and respect that I thought, I wanted. And so I kind of deviated from medicine into dentistry as I went into college and then on into dental school. Graduated from Baylor and went into private practice as an associate for the first few years, and then went on to my own private practice thereafter.
So whenever you were going into being a practice owner, compared to now, what do you wish you'd have known whenever you started that first practice or whenever you became a practice owner?
Well, so many things, Jonathan. I think first of all, we're painted a vision in our early lives, and that could be from our parents, our school teachers, professors in college, and certainly our instructors and people in dental school, that there's this vision of creating freedom in your life if you just get enough education and you go into the right career, or in our case, into a professional practice, right? Where we're the owner, and we think that we'll probably have the ability to earn enough income to have a pretty secure and pretty good lifestyle. That's always been the vision. The problem that I see, and for so many, is that they work hard and get into practice and work on their skills and take a lot of CE, but really don't have the vision as to, is this the way it's going to be for 30 or 35 or 40 years? I think practicing dentistry was an awesome career choice, and I love my time in practice. But for me, there was always another side. There was an entrepreneurial side. And so I'm really getting a chance to live both. Too many people get into, I think, this pathway, this rut, and this is the only way. And they really never have a real true exit strategy. You know, when do I want to get off this hamster wheel? When do I really want to enjoy freedom in my life? And for too many, it's going to be someday. Well, someday when I have everything just right, someday when I have enough financial capital saved up and enough income, and my practice is a certain level, and I've done this and this and this and this, then I'll start living my life. And the sad story is that I talk to many doctors today who are in their late 50s, early 60s, maybe even approaching 70 years old, and they wish they had done some things earlier in practice so that they had the opportunity, they had the freedom to exit or transition out on their own terms, not because they're forced to stay in the game, so to speak, much longer than they ever thought they would.
So what are some of the things that they wish that they would have done? Because that's really what I want to get out of you today, so that our listeners can know what regrets people that were in their shoes 30 years ago are having now.
Yeah, not having enough financial acumen. And that's hard to do because, you know, we're focused when we're going through college and dental school, we're focused on the task at hand. That's to graduate, right? That's to graduate and get our license, get our degree, and get started. So I get it. But again, the problem is the focus is always on us. It's always on us as the technician, as Michael Gerber so appropriately states in his great book, The E-Myth, or The E-Myth Revisited. You know, being the technician, as awesome as that is, and that's what we're all trained to do, if we continue to focus on being the best technical person, we never really get out of our shoes. We never really get out of being that owner who also has to do it, to provide the service or make the widgets, whatever kind of business you're in. For us, it's providing services. So we focus completely on being a better us. And there's nothing wrong with that. I took tons of CE while I was in practice. I went to LVI, I went down to Pankey. I took all the courses. So that's important. I'm not saying it's not. But we get no training in business whatsoever. You know, we're let out of school and we start this new career with no idea of what really running a business is. Now, when I graduated over 30 years ago, there was a lot more margin in professional practice, margin for error, I should say, a lot more margin for error. You didn't have to be a really super great business owner to survive and actually provide pretty well. Today, as we all know, the margin of error is slimmed down to where it's almost razor edge. And if you're not a really good business owner, you're not going to make it today. That's why corporate clinics are rolling up many practices today, because they see the opportunity to come in where we, as great technical providers, have not made the opportunity to learn about business. And then there's the whole financial side. So we're taught early on to work hard, you know, scrape together enough money after we pay our overhead and we pay taxes, and put that money aside, and then what? Turn it over to a financial advisor, a financial planner, a money manager. Now, I'm not putting those people down at all. There are some great people that I think are really dedicated to the cause, but most of them, Jonathan, are focused on Wall Street. And I'm not saying it's not important to be diversified, but too many doctors I know have ridden that Wall Street roller coaster. They ride it up and they ride it down. They ride it up, they ride it down. There's no real control there, in my opinion. And so I really help doctors today with the ability to create freedom through hard asset, real estate-based assets that they have some control over, and have the ability to orchestrate their financial future so that they don't get to age 59, 65, or approaching 70 years old and still having to work. In fact, I've got one doctor who's part of our mastermind who is in his 40s, and he came to us because he said his dad with whom he went into practice after he graduated, he said eventually died literally at the chair. I mean, he didn't have a heart attack, but he was practicing till the day he died. And this younger doctor said, I don't want that vision in my life. My dad was a great dad, but he never got it. He never was able to figure out how to build, equity and net worth outside of his practice so that he did have the opportunity to really live a life outside of practice. That's sad. And I think that's got to change. And you're doing so many great things with your podcast and reaching out and helping young doctors with understanding business at the core. It's so needed today. It's so much needed today.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's really the whole purpose of the podcast in general. Was whenever I was out networking, speaking with other consultants, speaking with dentists, we were having these conversations. I said, hey, there's a lot that people could learn from these things. So instead of me just having these be singular entries into my Rolodex of information, I said, hey, instead of me just talking to these people, let's record it so that people can actually hear all this great information that is out there, such as yours. So I find it very interesting that you focus on the hard assets. I think that's a great strategy because, like you said, as the technician, most people spend most of their time trying to learn their craft, better their craft, and do better, clinician-wise or through just as in a dental-specific manner. So either and for the listeners out there, most of the time we talk about the stories about people being able to build up successful businesses. There is definitely an aspect of being able to build a successful business in this interview, but this interview for you out there listening, this is more into the road type stuff. Like, where are you going in your path? I've actually spoken with another interviewee, Dr. Anissa Holmes, about building culture in a dental practice. Yeah. And we spoke about this briefly about creating visions in practices. And that is actually what Dr. Phelps helps out with a lot as well. So can you speak to a little bit about how you help with creating a vision for dental practice owners?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I listened to that interview with Dr. Holmes. That was a great interview, and she's exactly right. And this is something that I didn't understand when I was early in practice. Is you've got to have a vision and a culture. You've got to be the leader. How much in leadership training did we get in school? Goose egg, none, zero, nada. So again, we're turned out there into the world in our practices, not knowing how to lead a team, not knowing how to build a team. We're just technical. We're just trying to up our technical skills. So having a vision, and in our mastermind, we talk about a freedom blueprint. Well, each individual doctor must design for themselves or with their significant other or spouse, what is your definition of freedom? What does that mean for you? It's different for everybody. Freedom doesn't mean not having freedom until you exit practice, because if you enjoy what you enjoy doing, then freedom to me is doing what you want to do, with whom you want to do it, and when you want to do it. So for many doctors, what they learn to do is by creating more freedom, they can stay in practice a long time, maybe working 2 days or a day and a half at some point, treating the patients they want to treat and doing the services that they enjoy doing, implants or cosmetics or whatever it is, and building a real business that has other people in it. I think the reason, Jonathan, so many associateships fail is because there's no vision. A doctor thinks, well, I'm working so hard right now in my practice. What's the answer? What's the solution? Oh, I just need to bring a young doctor into my practice and they can start doing some of the work I'm tired of doing. It's not going to work. Not going to work. You haven't built the framework or the foundation. You haven't built the culture. Having the right people on the right seats of the bus, as Good to Great Carlson, right? Trying to think of the author.
I don't recall it either.
Great book. I'll think of it. But Good to Great. So he talks about having the right people on the right seats. And we're so bad because we don't understand business that we'll hire anybody who shows up and says, I've got X number of years experience doing this or that. We don't have a vision. We don't know how to build a culture. We don't know how to lead. We don't know how to build the systems in place. That's critical, and yet we just give it lip service many times when we talk about it. So you've got to have that in place, and from that standpoint, then you can start to free up some of the stress that you might be feeling right now in your younger practice. Then you can bring on associates when it's the right place, right time, and doing it the right way. Who do you bring on? How do you vet them? How do you create enough hoops so you bring the right people, whether it's staff people, support people, or another doctor? Without having that in place, one is going to fail. And then what happens? Then you pull back and go, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. you give up, right? And then you just think, well, I just got to work harder. I just got to go to more CE courses. It's not going to do it. I tell the doctors that your talented skills and all the time you spent going to get your degree. In fact, I think you said it best. I think you said, Jonathan, that dentists spend 15,000 hours, becoming a dentist, and 0 hours learning how to be a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. You've got to flip it now. Once you get out of school, you got to flip it and probably spend about 15% on your CE and about 85% on the business aspects of running a business. That's what it is today. Sorry to say it, but that's what it is. But it can be a fun ride. If you bring the right people on and have the right culture and systems, it can actually be a fun ride because now the pressure goes off of us. The problem, again, is our mindset. We're taught to control. We have to control. Certainly in the mouth, we have to control. We have to be very precise about what we do when we treat our patients. But when we're running a business, we've got to take that hat off and say, you know what, I can let go of some of these things I'm typically trying to control and bring other people in and empower them to do the things that I can't do because I can't run around like a chicken with his head cut off, which is what we do a lot of time. We're running. We never can figure out why we haven't built up a business that can take some of the pressure off, take some of the stress off, so we can actually enjoy the ride and actually work more on the business or the practice than always in it. Big problem. Flipping that switch takes a different mindset. And I think to do that, Jonathan, we've got to surround ourselves with other like-minded people who have already gone through that pathway, people that are on the same road, because there's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be questions. There's always going to be these self-limiting beliefs that keep us from stepping outside our comfort zone, the comfort zone that we say, well, I'm stressed out and I wish things were better, but I don't want to risk trying this or risk that, because what if I make a mistake and I've got to provide for my family? I get it. I mean, I felt the same thing, but surrounding myself with other people and having coaches and mentors and really a board of directors that I feel has my back and not some agenda, where it's people that want to just, pick my pocket, but real people who have been there, done it, not just from dentistry, but from other avenues of life that can really help me with my vision and keep me moving when I feel like I'm getting stuck, because we all get stuck.
Very important stuff. So tell me a little bit about the times that you did get stuck in your career and how you ended up getting past that. I really liked how you said about the being, not being afraid of the uncomfortable. There's an old saying, I don't know who it's from, that success actually lies in the uncomfortable. That's right. And because anytime you're wanting to stretch yourself, you've got to be able to kind of jump past that, as well as I like how you reference self-limiting beliefs, which I'm a big, it's one of those things that you don't realize are there until you actually acknowledge that that is such a thing of a self-limiting belief, which for the people out there that are aware of that is basically whenever you come up with an excuse that is really, you feel like it is not just an excuse, it's a reason, but whenever you actually really dig down deep and diagnose it, you say, actually, the only reason I'm saying that is because I'm afraid.
That's right. That's
no,
right.
I'm afraid of doing something differently or doing something else. So, so going into the business aspect, most dental practice owners are trying to create a business that are generating them some type of income to be able to create this vehicle that is going to fuel whatever that vision is, right? So how did you, to go back to my original question, how did you, in the moment when you would get stuck in those things, how did you have the foresight to be able to keep going forward or be able to adjust, to be able to move towards that?
Yeah, it's really being around other people. And again, as I said, not just in dentistry, but more business minded, learning about marketing, and realizing that me not being perfect was okay. Because again, in dental school, I think we're kind of, it's kind of placed upon us that we have to be perfect. I mean, I'm the level of requirement, in the technical procedures that we learn to do is really, really high. And I remember in dental school, there was not an opportunity for us to really, go outside the box, even in the laboratory. Now on patients, I get it. We're not going to experiment there, but even in the laboratory, where I think it would have been great to allow young dentists to try some other things, but everything was graded, and if you made a mistake, you failed that particular aspect. And so we were taught early on not to risk anything. That's bad. That's really bad. We have to learn. I say that the greatest risk of all is not taking any risk in life. That's the greatest risk. Doing nothing. So what I had to learn and I'll tell about some of my setbacks, is that I had to surround myself with other people that helped me stay on track and continue to see the vision, my real purpose in life. So I was like every other dentist. I was working hard and upping my skills. And my daughter, who was, this is going back many years, my daughter's 24 now. She's my only child, and she was diagnosed with leukemia, high risk leukemia, when she was only 2.5 years old.
Oh, right.
Well, that turned.
I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, so that cuts deep.
You're not prepared for it. My thinking was, Jonathan, that as long as I was, a strong leader in my family, I worked hard, I had integrity, that I could build a great life for me and my family. Right? I never thought, because in the family I was growing up with, I can't say there was any like major downsides. My dad was a hard worker and provided well, and I thought, well, I'll do the same thing. It's all going to be fine. And yet here I'm throwing this curveball. My family was throwing a curveball relatively young in my career, and I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know how to go. I just thought as long as I kept working hard, we'll just muscle through this, is what I thought. Well, good news is our daughter survived leukemia, but it was a long, hard road. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't surround myself with a support group then. I thought, well, I've been taught to be self-reliant in my life. And particularly as a male, right? We think, well, we've got to be the rock. And so I'm not going to admit that I'm afraid. I'm not going to admit that I'm scared. I'm just going to buck up, and bad thing for me to do. I emotionally detached myself from the situation. Long story short, lost my marriage because I didn't know how to be present in the situation. All I knew is go out there and fight the fight to provide for the financial means of the family. I wasn't there emotionally. I didn't know. So lost the marriage, which is a major reset. And unfortunately, a lot of dentists, probably over 50%, lose one marriage. I know many that are on their third marriage. That's not. Here's a tip for your listeners. That's not a wealth building activity. All right, just to throw a little bit of humor in here, but I'm not speaking in a humorous way about divorce. It's difficult from an emotional standpoint. It's difficult on a family. It's difficult from a financial standpoint. So I didn't surround myself with people who probably could have given me some insight had I been willing to listen and avail myself of that. I just said, well, I'm going to do this myself, because that's what I was taught to do growing up. Be tough, grind it out, make it happen. So anyway, going fast forward, my daughter Jenna, who survived leukemia, she then, unfortunately, maybe it was related, maybe it wasn't, to all the chemotherapy, but she started having epileptic seizures. So for about 4 years, a lot of breakthrough seizures, and of course she was on a lot of anti-seizure medication. Well, between the chemotherapy and the seizure medication, at age 12, she was in end-stage liver failure. Her liver was gone. She was actually vomiting blood because the liver was backing up through the esophageal venous plexus into her stomach, and she was vomiting blood. The liver could not filter. So now we're on this new crisis, right? And I'm like trying to figure that one out. So how are we going to put that together? Where do we put her on the list? Is she going to get a transplant? Again, I'll fast forward very quickly and tell your listeners, we got through it. She survived. She's with us today. So I don't want to hold that in suspense, because that's the great news. And I'll try to keep from the emotional standpoint, because I don't want to get emotional here. But that, Jonathan, that was my wake-up call. And we got through the leukemia, and I still hadn't really changed. I was still okay, we got through that. I lost the marriage. Certainly I was saddened by that, but it still didn't really wake me up. And it wasn't until she went through the liver crisis and we went through that, I'm thinking, okay, God's trying to tell me something here. He's saying, David, you quit living your life so it's all about you, and you've got to learn how to balance your life. I didn't understand balance. I didn't understand how I could really build a practice that wasn't dependent upon me, which is kind of the key here I'm trying to give your listeners, is that there is a sacrifice period you go through in life. There is a sacrifice period that we have to get through, but quit sacrificing your whole career. You can build a practice that's a real business. You can build wealth and passive cash flow outside your practice at the same time. Now, that's the one good thing I did. I started investing in real estate while I was still in dental school, my first year of dental school. That was my backup plan. And I learned how to do that kind of simultaneously. And so I had that platform, so that when I finally decided, after Jenna survived her liver transplant, I said, enough's enough. I'm going to quit being tied or chained to a practice. I'm going to sell out. So that's when I was 21 years in practice. That was back in 2004. And so I had associates in my practice, but never offered a financial stake. I wasn't ready to give up control, right? It was still all about me. Well, I was afraid. Again, it's that risk. Well, what if I bring in a partner that doesn't fit? Well, we're not going to talk about that on this podcast, but there's a way to do it the right way. Again, it goes back to culture and vision. But I did have an associate who was a young doc who really was gifted. He was dedicated to dentistry. He was motivated. He was taking all the right courses. And I thought, this is the answer. This is the answer. The only thing he didn't have, Jonathan, was his credit score wasn't good enough to get outside financing. He'd made some mistakes when he was younger. Who doesn't, right? So it wasn't quite there, but he came in as an associate. He was producing very well. In fact, he was there when I was outside of the practice with my daughter, Jenna, about half the time that year while she was recovering. I found out some things, that the practice wasn't all about me. It didn't have to be all about me. Everybody stepped up in the practice when I was out. Never thought it was going to happen. The associate stepped up, the staff stepped up, and the patients, who I thought would never see anybody else, guess what? They were happy to see the associate. Self-limiting beliefs. Can't do it without me. Wrong approach. So we got through that, and I sold the practice to the associate, carried the financing. I was comfortable doing that because I'd done that in real estate. Sure. But I looked askance at some of what should have been some clues as to why I shouldn't have done this. And again, this young doc had everything going for him, was single. It was like handing the keys of a Ferrari to a 16-year-old. He took it, and some bad things happened. Long story short, I had to take the practice back through litigation. So here I am. I thought I was out, going to spend time with Jenna, not be tied to the practice. I got to go back and take this practice back. And as you can imagine, taking it back at that point was like taking back a property that's been foreclosed, and the tenants on the way out decide to bust up the drywall and pour cement down the toilet. Now, that associate didn't do that, but what I'm saying is the practice was in shambles. I had lost half of my core staff. The staff had to look out for themselves, right? They're seeing this practice in shambles. Yeah, Dr. Phelps is trying to take it back, but is he going to be successful and when? So half of them had to run. Well, what do you think the patients are doing? You think they're hanging around watching this practice in turmoil? No, the best patients are leaving. So when I get the practice back, I asked a friend of mine who's a practice appraiser. I said, if I just wanted to fire sell this practice, what's it worth? He goes, guess what? Well, he didn't say guess what. He just said, he said, I can't put a value on it. You've got no track record. He said, this thing's in a downward spiral. You've got assets, depreciated assets. That's about all you got, David Phelps. And so I thought, I could have just closed it up because I didn't have to have the practice as part of my financial plan. The real estate was good enough, but in my heart, Jonathan, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to my patients. And I couldn't do that to the staff that remained on. So I got the practice back, but the key decision I made was this. And a good friend of mine, Mike Abernathy, kind of weighed in. And when I was talking to him about it, he said, well, David, you got one of two choices. Either you just lock the door and just quit, or you got to put the scrubs back on, suit back up, and go into the practice and rebuild it. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, you'll have another chance. I didn't like either one of those plans. And so I decided I'm not going to suit back up, but I'm also not going to close the door. So back in 2007 is when I got 2008 is when I got the practice back. And do you remember what was happening in 2008 and 2009? I'm sure you do.
Sure. Yeah. Financial crisis.
Yeah. Financial crisis, housing market down the tubes, credit financing was all locked up. I mean, nothing was happening. Everything wasn't moving. So not a great time to take back an asset I have to rebuild. But here's what I'll tell you. And I didn't do this by myself. This is the key thing. I got help, because help on a business side, on rebuilding the systems and bringing in new staff, building the vision, the culture that we were talking about a minute ago. With that, then I brought in not just one, I brought not just two, but I brought in 3 new associates over about 5 months. Now that's a lot. That's a lot to do. Go ahead. You're gonna ask a question.
No, so you brought in 3 associates. Were they taking over one before, whenever the other owner was taking it into a downward spiral? Was that just him that was working at that point in time? Were there any other associates that were there at that point? No, he was there by himself. He was there by himself. Wow. So I had to come back in with a different vision of who I was going to be. Mm-hmm. I was not going to be the dentist provider. Now I did go into practice and I did have the scrubs on for a short period of time. So sure. But my point was not to get roped back into that.
So I brought the one associate in, and really the focus at that point was how do I go back into the community, relatively small community, so positives and negatives can be enhanced very quickly, right? So we had a big negative. So how do we come back in and show strength and bring patients back and also market to new patients? So it was all really about marketing and leveraging in a positive way my new staff and the systems. So to all the young docs who are listening to this and thinking, wow, it's sure tough out there in this environment today to make my practice grow. Well, I took a practice that was in a downward spiral in probably the worst point in the marketplace in the last 10 years. And within 18 months, we were back up, and it exceeded my previous numbers when I owned the practice, and then sold it to one of the associates who rose to the top, in 2010 for all cash. He got bank financing, 100% bank financing. Why? Because the practice had bankable books. You know what we're talking about. We had books, and they weren't dependent upon me being the key doctor in the practice. That was another key. So it all worked out, but I'll tell you, when I had to take the practice back, my wife will tell you, I was angry, I was frustrated, I was, there was a point, Jonathan, when I was not a happy camper at all. So I'm very positive. I'm a very positive person. We all go through setbacks in life. If you haven't gone through one yet, trust me, you will. The best thing you can do is surround yourself with like-minded, entrepreneurial mindset people. Be on podcasts like this, where you can learn from other people. Anybody who tells you that life that life is for them has been a quick slope up and it's never been negative, they're not telling you the truth. We've all gone through it. So if you had some things in life that haven't worked well, or you're in a place right now in your life or your practice that you don't feel good about, look, it's temporary if you'll get outside the box, if you'll get outside the comfort zone. But you can't do that by yourself. You've got to have other people that can give you perspective. Because when we're in the trenches in our own life and business, we can only see what we can see. It's the analogy, the forest and the trees. Well, we can't see the forest, the bigger picture, because we're down in the trees. We can't see that. Other people can look at your situation or our situation and quickly help us see things that we can't see. Help us take steps forward that we can't see the way out because we're hunkered down in our emotional mindset about what we're dealing with. So get outside the box, because that's the quickest track to getting you to the next step and breaking through those barriers that we all feel at some points in our life and our practice.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of my favorite sayings that I've shared on the podcast before. I think it was Winston Churchill who said it, that if you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking, because if you just stay there, you're just going to remain in hell. Right. So you got to keep going, because you got to get out of there. So I love the insight that you've given our audience on that. So you took back the practice, you staffed it with associates, you then sold it to one of those associates.
Correct.
I hear a lot about people that, they're the people that kind of can get past that owning one practice mentality, where they can get to the point where they're comfortable with owning a practice. Could this possibly be a vehicle or a system that an owner could use to own multiple practices?
Yeah, I think it sure could. And if I was not enjoying and doing and having passion about real estate, this is exactly what I would be doing. I would take what I learned and I would multiply that. I think the problem that too many younger docs do, well, at any age and career, again, I think they think, well, my current practice is doing X. I want X plus. So how do I do that? Instead of getting X working better, they go outside, right? And go, well, I'll buy that other practice, or I'll start a new startup over here. Until you have the original practice, I think, totally optimized with all the pieces that you and I know are foundational, you shouldn't go outside, because what happens is any of your issues that you haven't resolved just become multiplied. And I've seen too many young docs, well, I shouldn't say young, it's at any age, that have the multiple practice that haven't really had the foundation set, and they get strapped for time and they're running around, crazy, and that doesn't work. So again, setting the foundation in one practice, really optimizing that one, really getting everything laid out, so that then, yes, there's an opportunity, I think, to go out and whether you do acquisitions or mergers or whatever it is, whatever your model is going to be, it can work. But just set the foundation first. It's very critical.
So how did you manage whenever you were hiring the associates to come back after retaining the practice back, were those associates that you were telling there was a potential for ownership, or
absolutely?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's something that an owner doctor, you've got to have a clear vision. Again, that's where we come back to vision. What's your vision? If you're wishy-washy about your vision, then bringing someone on board your practice that's going to stick is not likely. So yeah, up until that point, I had associates, but never with the idea that I was going to let someone come on board and buy in at some point. But at that point, Jonathan, I was truly ready, obviously, because I thought I had sold the practice. So I was ready for someone to take it out. So there was nothing wishy-washy about me at all. I let them know that there's absolutely an opportunity here. In fact, that's why I brought 3 in, because I want to see, which one. And I thought one of them would rise up, which they did, and might keep one of the other associates on board. I didn't know how it's going to play out, and I don't think they did either. But it was a great way to give me a plan B. I think you should do that really in every part of your business, your practice. Is don't rely on just one. You should have cross-trained people. You should always have a bench of people that you could bring on board, even if you got some that are part-time, that are ready to come in and plug and play, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, people move because of family situations or financial reasons, or you may lose a key person. Well, or they may not work out. Someone you bring on board may not work out. So I like to bring on 2 people, and someone might say, well, doesn't that cost you a lot of money? No, it's investment for the future. You can find out who's going to be the best one. So having 3 associates gave me three chances at bat, to have one that would rise up and be the right one to take it. And for me, that worked out.
So whenever you were building that practice back up, what were some of the things that you did to be able to grow it so quickly? Because 18 months is a very quick turnaround.
Yeah, well, I was able, because I wasn't doing the primary dentistry, is I could really focus on the business. I had been, over the years, and particularly probably several years prior to that, even though I'd been in real estate for a long time and really understood financial leverage, I really hadn't spent a great amount of time on business building, other than, as I mentioned, like reading the E-Myth book by Gerber. But I had been plugging into learning more about marketing and really business skill sets. So fortunately, I had some additional ability and concept on how to do this rebuild of this practice. So I focused on the vision and leadership and infrastructure systems, new people, new hire, with help. Again, I didn't do all this by myself. I got other people that helped, but marketing is probably one of the key things that most doctors and professional practice owners don't understand how important it is. Marketing is key, and you shouldn't be thinking about you need to do all the marketing, but you've got to orchestrate it. You've got to know enough about basic marketing to bring on a person in your practice. So marketing and outreach to the community. There's so many channels of marketing that can be used, and I'll bet most of the dentists out there maybe use 1 or 2, and there's probably at least 25 could be used, many of them simultaneously. The problem is we limit ourselves because we think, well, we have to do it all. That's again that bad mindset. But having someone on board, even if it's a part-time person, and they can be virtual. It doesn't have to be someone there that's right. A virtual person who understands marketing and can help plug the things in place. So we really focused on some major campaigns, some reactivation campaigns of patients who had left, giving them a reason why to come back. Got to tell the story. You've got to be authentic. People will relate to you if you will be authentic with them. So I had to be authentic. Made a bad choice here. So, it didn't work out, but here's what we're doing to rectify. So we got a good number of our old patients back. Retention. So we were in that point where the practice was still very unstable. And so we had to immediately start a retention program to those who were like maybe on the fence. They hadn't been back to practice, not because they hadn't left, but they hadn't come back. So we had to do outreach there. Certainly new patient campaigns. Everybody focuses on new patients, but if you don't focus on the retention of your current customers and maximizing the opportunity there with them, you're missing the boat, right? So we had lots of channels of marketing out there. I also learned to be a better speaker. So I would go out in the community and I would speak at different groups, just on different aspects of interest to them on family dentistry and oral systemic health, and spoke to the group on the mothers of twins, and I mean, any group out there, I was out there because, again, I didn't have to be in the practice. So I'm like out there as the marketing lead person for the practice. I'm the face of the practice. Well, people knew me. Yet they didn't have to expect that I would be the one treating them. Why? Because we had the right culture built in the practice at that point. So they really didn't have to care about which doctor was seeing them. If we had the right people there, they were all taken care of. And that's a key. That's a key, but to build a practice that way. So that you can be replaceable. You can be replaceable when or if you need to be, because things happen in life.
I like that a lot because, like you said, if you I think that there's probably a lot of people that have the mindset of, well, if I'm the one out there marketing and doing all this marketing, and then the practice becomes me, it doesn't become the practice. But in reality, if you set the right culture and you set the right vision, then as long as your associates or the people that work with you, exude that culture, they show that vision, then they're going to be receiving the same kind of care, regardless of if you're the one doing it or you're the face of the practice. I really, really like that. So walk me through today, to the people that are out there right now, walk me through kind of I know it's going to be different for everybody, and the answer will probably be somewhat, it depends, but walk me through okay, so let me paint a picture real quick, and then I'll have you do this. Most of the listeners out there are going to be people that have somewhere in the $300,000 in school debt, if they're just getting out of school, maybe even more now, especially if they have a specialty right behind that name. If they are, if they've purchased a house, or if they have, some other, maybe undergrad debt, they could be upwards to $500,000 in debt. If they're in certain areas of the country, they could be even higher. They're either going to be opening a practice and taking on, $300,000 to $500,000 in debt for that, or they're going to be buying a practice anywhere from $300,000 to even up towards to $1 million in debt at that point. So they're just burdened with this amazing amount of debt sitting on their back. So most people, I believe, are going to be focused on that burden more than trying to being able to build up this lifestyle to be able to complete these visions. So as a quick question, do you feel like the people that are in those situations that, that aren't buying a practice, if they go the corporate route, do you feel like most of the people that come to you at the age of 59 would have been able to get to that vision if they were going to go as a corporate associate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think going the corporate route and having a definitive income that one can count on, that's a track that is probably attractive to a number of young dentists. And I get it. I get why. I think younger people today, the millennials, are more into quality of life earlier in life. I think that's a good thing. So how do you get that? Yes, I think they probably do have more quality and could probably do more. But then there's that entrepreneurial side that, the other half of us have, right, Jonathan, that says, maybe I'll go work for corporate for a few years, but that is not my vision. I want my own culture. So if that's you, then if you go to corporate for a few years, and yes, I know, getting started and having a set paycheck, is very important when you have that kind of debt. That may be a road to go through early. I think the practice setting that you start out with, and for most today, it's probably going to be either corporate or as an associate. It's very difficult to do startups today. A few maybe try to do it, maybe they can, but I think those early years are critical. And even if you go corporate, you really, as a young doctor getting out of school, you really want to look at it. Who am I going to spend those first few years with? Certainly earning a paycheck, yeah, that's critical. But you can waste a lot of time if you're in a bad environment. You need to find a place where you can really be learning, not only to increase your clinical skills, but learning about business from somebody, either an organization or another doctor who has that practice setting. Don't jump on board with the first place that says, hey, we'll take you in. A bad mistake. Spend a little time before you get out of school and hit the ground running to find a place that you can get some mentorship. It may not be the place you're going to stay for the next 10, 15, 20 years. You may still have vision of going on having your own practice. That's great. But earn while you learn is what I say. Apprenticeship is really a model that I think we don't look at in this country like we should. People go to school and think once they're out of school, they're supposed to be able to hit the ground running and be earning this income that will provide, some pretty decent lifestyle early on. I think that's a bad way to look at it. Apprenticeship where you're spending more time learning and not so much worried about the income is a better way to go. But the income's got to be there if you've got this huge debt. So it's more of a conundrum today than it was when I got out of school, with some student loan debt, but
Mhm.
not nearly what the young docs are facing today overall.
It's pretty crushing. So, I had that question pop up in my head. And because I know I have quite a few people out there that are in corporate jobs or as working for associates elsewhere that are just considering this path of entrepreneurship. And I guess, if that's the season of life they find themselves in, if that's what they see themselves doing, then the other half of the audience that is entrepreneurial, then that's good for the entrepreneurial side, because that means that they could possibly hire those people to be their associates, which would be a very synergistic relationship. So, talking back to before I was thinking through your question, and that jumped in my head, and I asked you that as an aside. But going through someone who's in that season of life right now, where they're out of school, they're buying or starting a practice, and they are trying to set up a roadmap. So you would say that you need to come up with a vision. Number one, make sure that's something you can stomach as being an entrepreneur, and then start getting in the practice, trying to build a practice up. But all at the same time, you have to. What's the old saying? Begin with, or the Covey saying, begin with the end in mind.
Right.
Yeah. And so you have to also, so whenever guys, when you're out there, we talk a lot about building right now, what you can do right now to affect your practice, to be able to build revenue, to be able to provide money. But, and admittedly, as a CPA, I talk about money probably an inordinate amount of time, but the thing about money is that it is only a motivating factor as of like right now. Like a lot of the times you find as you gain more in money, you realize that the money isn't the aspect that what you're trying to do. Most of the time, it is what Dr. Phelps has been talking about, all the things that you're going through to be able to try and get through for your lifestyle, for the relationships with people, and all of these other things, so that you can set up to be comfortable in the future. So while I'm not talking about money now, that is only because that is what fuels those things sometimes. So for those people that are in that, and they're beginning with the ending in mind, they've got a vision now, they've got a practice that's up and running and is profitable at this point, they're able to have extra money. What do you, as far as extra discretionary earnings, I guess if you would say, what would you do in today's culture, in today's time, for those people that have that money coming in to be able to work towards, because I think you and I talked about this earlier, is a lot of people, they bring in this wealth, this money, but they don't ever build wealth.
Right.
So can you explain to them what the difference in wealth and money is, I guess?
Yeah. Well, yeah, to answer that question, wealth to me is having assets, and typically that, for me, that's capital assets, real businesses or real estate as good examples. So capital assets that provide 24/7 passive income. In other words, that income's coming in whether I'm working or not. That's what wealth provides you. Just having money, or quote being rich, is more of a lifestyle presence. That's where you're trading time for dollars. You're working hard at some career or profession, and as long as you can keep working hard enough, that a lot of people can provide a pretty decent lifestyle. You can live in a nice neighborhood, you can drive nice cars, you can take good vacations, you can probably put your kids in some private school. But when you stop working, or if you're forced to stop working by some health issue or disability, you've got some real issues there. So that's the difference between money, or being rich, and wealth, which means you've got a plan B or capital assets to provide for you. Something else that you said, I was going to jump back on, and I lost my train of thought. So we'll just come back to that.
So I was asking, what would you do in today's for the 30 to 40 age range? Yeah. What do you feel like is a good way for them to do? Because there's a million people out there selling financial advice in some form or fashion, and every person who sells financial advice typically tries to say that that their way is the way that is going to lead you to being able to retire. Or they'll paint these, they'll give you these nice spreadsheets that have what you're able to put in every month. I had one of my clients came to me, and they had a financial advisor come to them, was a trusted one, was like a college friend of theirs, and they were trying to sell that doctor something like a $250,000 a year whole life insurance premium policy, or they'd have to put in $20 something thousand a month into a whole life policy and wanted them to fund that for the next 25 years. And it was just like, and because they said that was the only way they were going to be able to grow this thing. So what do you feel like as far as is the opportunity for people in that age range right now?
Yeah, that's great. Financial advisors, I think most of them are well-meaning, Jonathan, but they have been educated and given a platform to offer their clients or prospective clients that's pretty much financial based. So insurance, annuities, bonds, stocks. Let's face it, that's how they make their money. Most of them, not all, but most of them have never dealt on the capital asset side because, well, they're not licensed to make money in that arena. They don't go there. So you have to be careful from whom you take advice. Not saying, having some diversification, having the right kind of insurance, absolutely. Doing some investing on Wall Street the right way, sure, not a problem with that. But I think the best investment for anybody is to look at the investment in themselves first. How are you investing yourselves? Now, again, I'm not saying that taking more clinical continuing education, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that's typically where they funnel everything. No, I think you need to work on yourself, your mindset. Become a part of, participant in other groups. There's some that are free out there, but whatever it takes to be a part of other groups where you're investing in yourself, and then in so doing, invest in your practice first and foremost. I know everybody wants to start the retirement planning and whoever you're working with, but invest in the practice first. Optimize the practice, but again, don't get carried away with too much high-tech technology. I've seen a lot of doctors who invested in equipment that has been promised to, create this wealth and income, and it turns up ending up in the closet or on eBay. How many times have we seen that? So again, you've got to be careful about that, but invest in yourself, invest in your practice first, optimize the practice, and then you've got to be the orchestrator of your plan. So it's like, well, how do I do that? Because I'm not a financial advisor. I haven't studied all that stuff. Well, I haven't either. So I found entrepreneurs and people with a mindset that I felt was right for me. That was real estate. So I spent a great deal of time learning that. But being part of a group or having mentors can be speed to giving you the right information, the right time. But you've got to decide who's right for you. Decide that first, and then go deeper. Be careful from whom you take advice. I always say, I'll take advice from people who are living the life that I want to live. Taking advice from people who are still churning it out, trading time for dollars in an office behind a desk, if that's all they're doing, I'm going to be a little careful there because that's not my lifestyle. Here's a quick story. My CPA, Jonathan, this was in the mid 80s. I was relatively young in practice. I had already been investing in real estate for a couple of years. I had probably had at that point some close to 20 properties. And I went to the CPA who was kind of touted as, the CPA to dentists. And so I went to him, and I remember he was reviewing my previous year's tax return, kind of getting up to speed with what I was doing. And he's seeing the return listing these different rental properties I had. He's flipping through the pages of the return, and he looked at me. He said, okay. He said, but just don't forget what brought you here. And I understand what he was saying. He was saying, David Phelps, don't get lost in this tract over here called this real estate thing because dentistry is your engine. And so I understand what he's saying, but he also didn't understand my mindset is that I wasn't losing focus. I was building a plan B on the side. There's fast ways to do that. When I was younger, I did it the harder way because I didn't know any better. I was managing a practice and real estate. So I learned a lot, but there's faster ways to do it. So my point is, whatever track you're taking, wherever you are in your career practice, don't lose sight of the ball. That is your practice. Invest in yourself, invest in the practice, optimize it the right way, and then start building wealth outside the practice as your plan B, so that when you are ready, when you have reached your freedom blueprint destination, you can decide to live life the way you want to. And we built you can give this to your listeners at the right time or on the bonus page, but we built a retirement calculator that any doctor, any dentist can plug into. It's web-based. They can plug it to, put some numbers in it, and it will show them the gap that they have right now between where they are today and what a freedom destination would be for them. And it starts with their vision of freedom. Don't wait or think you're going to wait until you're 60 years old, like so many doctors who call me today and wish they'd done something different. Start today, because you can reach freedom without quitting practice much earlier in your career and take the pressure off, the stress off of all the financial elements that do put so much pressure on us. Debt, lifestyle, kids, all those things that come into play.
Love it. Do you have time for just one or two more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So as far as putting yourself in that situation, investing in yourself so that you can create a business that can fuel all of these investments, which I would assume you'd be able to scale up much faster if you have a higher amount of income stream sitting behind you. Tell me about what you would do today if you were going to be going back into dentistry. You touched on it earlier, so and if that's the same, the entire answer, that's fine. But what would you do today if you were a dentist in today's environment, as far as starting a practice or buying a practice? What would you do to get back into owning a dental practice?
Yeah, well, if I was going back with what I know today, and I have a lot more of business acumen today, so I would go back into practice, but I would actually run that practice as a real business owner. Doesn't mean I would not see patients. I might decide one day a week to see certain patients because I love doing that treatment. But I would not go back into practice today and start up a practice or acquire a practice with the mindset that I'm going to go in and be 4 days or 4.5 days or 5 days a week in that practice. No, I may go in one day a week and do what I want to do. I'm going to run it as a real business and build that foundation. I'll build that culture, that vision with the systems and the right people, all the aspects that you cover a lot on your other podcasts. That's what I would do first today. A younger doc has probably got to do a couple things. They've got to get their clinical speed up, and that's something they're going to do. And then also need to learn more about the business of dentistry. So that's going to take maybe a little bit of time, depending upon how much time they have. But as soon as they can learn those things, they're going to be in a much better position, I believe, to design the future vision for themselves. I think solo practice, Jonathan, is going to become a real outlier. It's going to be more difficult to do that today. So you've got to learn how to build a business, how to bring in partners, what that looks like. Do that the right way. If you learn how to do that and realize that all business is about people and not just the doing of the thing, you'll do very well. But I didn't understand that early on. I thought it was about what I did. So learn about people, how to build a vision, how to be a leader. Invest in those areas as well as your continuing education. Try to balance it out and not just focus on just the clinical, even though that's what you were told to do to get faster and take more courses in implants and lasers and cosmetics. And I get it, but that's not going to be your fast track. Do some of that, but at least do an equal amount early on in your other skill sets that involve people, relationships, and vision and building the culture. You've got to be that. If you can be that person, there's no stopping you. Then you can have multiple practices, whatever you decide is right for you, and it's not going to be all about you doing what you do as the technical doctor in the practice.
I like that a lot. So how would you, if you were going to be building a business like that, where, hypothetically that you're building a practice where you'd be there clinically at some points in times and you'd have someone else as an associate working there as well. How would you, it may depend on the location and a bunch of other things as well, but how would you go about trying to get that set up from a financial aspect? Would you?
Yeah, I think today the best way is if you could bring in an equity partner, and I don't mean someone equal to you, even if they had the money, but an equity partner who had the capital, but also was someone who had already gone through the ranks of being in dentistry, had built, successful practice, maybe a multi-partner practice, and maybe had exited. There are a lot of very successful business owners and also dentists who have gone through life. They're on the other side now. They have all this great knowledge base. They also have capital, because if they've done it right, they have capital, and they don't want to be in the stock market. I say we, the baby boomers like I am, we love to give back. I love to see a young doctor who has the right mindset, who's seeking to have a better life. There's so many of us who love to give back. So you find a doctor through your network. Network's key. You've got to have a great network. So get out there and find a doctor, put yourself out there and say, and if you can prove to that senior doctor who has been through the trenches that you are a potentially good risk. I know a number of doctors who are my friends who would love to be an equity partner, with a younger doc who provides the boots on the ground in the practice. And what a great mentor-mentee relationship. Then you can do something that, as an equity partner, you don't have to have debt. A structure can be made so that the equity partner is paid back kind of as the practice grows, because they're going to have skin in the game. They're not going to be just providing capital like a bank does. They're going to be in there helping you. So choose that partner wisely. But wow, if you can get on the right page with someone like that, you can really, really grow your practice and grow your mindset, grow your leadership skills. That would be exactly the way I would do it today. Exactly the way I would do it.
Well, great. That's really good insight. So we've covered a lot of really good things today. I really appreciate you coming on. If anyone has any questions as far as like following up or anything that they need to reach out to you for, is there a good way for them to be able to reach out to you?
Sure. We've got an email address that's really easy to remember. It's freedom@freedomfounders.com. freedom@freedomfounders.com. That goes to a place where my direct admin person collates those. I love to answer questions, so that's a great place to go. You can go to our website, freedomfounders.com, get some more information about what we do. But I'm glad to answer questions for anybody who's interested, and trying to give them a little bit more of my perspective on the way I see things. So they can go to either of those places, Jonathan, and be glad to connect.
Great. So last question: is there anything that we didn't cover today that you feel like is important for the people that are in our audience to hear?
I'll just use one word that probably everybody's heard and heard it used in different aspects, but the word is leverage. We think a lot of times in terms of leverage as being financial leverage. Financial leverage is debt. There's good debt, there's bad debt, right? Debt is debt. We have to learn to use good debt the right way. So there's financial leverage, but there's also the leverage of leveraging other people's time, experience, skill set, expertise. And that comes along with building a real business. So that's where the relationships, that's where becoming a leadership. So don't think as leverage as just one element, and that's typically the financial side. Think about how you leverage in a positive way. It's win-win relationships. How do you empower other people? How do you help other people with their vision? So your staff people, a young associate, it can't be all about you, or it can't be all about me and what I want. I have got to build a culture and a business model that also empowers other people to get what they want. Zig Ziglar said it best. You help enough other people get what they want, you can have anything you want in life. I truly believe that. Truly believe that. It's got to be both ways. So use leverage in a positive way, both financially and as a business building model.
I like that a lot. I think that's something that every single person you interview, you should be asking. What are you wanting to get out of of your life effectively? I mean, you have to do it in the right manner. But every time I talk to my potential employees whenever they're coming on, it always comes up. What is it that you're wanting in the future? It's just an open-ended question like that, and they give me a weird look sometimes, but it always comes out with, well, I'd love to be able to have a great relationship with my daughter, or I'd love to be able to travel, or all these other things. And by me being aware of what they want out of life, it helps me help them get to that point. And when they see me assisting them in doing that, then they're naturally inclined to be helping me with my business and culture. So great point to end on. I really appreciate your time today, Dr. Phelps. And we thank you for being on the podcast.
Loved it. Loved every bit of it, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
A special thanks to Dr. Phelps for sticking around longer and providing some incredible insight into creating passive income streams and building a practice where you can replace yourself. Now, as you heard, you don't want to make the same mistake many of the other dentists regret and miss out on ways to create cash flow outside of your dental practice. So for today's bonus, you get access to Dr. Phelps' retirement calculator. Now, don't miss out on this easy way to gauge where you are with your long-term financial goals. To get that bonus, simply text practice to 33444. Again, that's practice to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the U.S. You'll also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make, or break your dental practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.